Elevate go head-to-head now. Maybe a couple of months back, we would have said this would have been a bit of a Classico. You know, we were talking about IG. Now, of course, TYDE. What are we making of this roster, Dev? I mean, this would have to be a bit of a difficult situation for all members on that roster.
No doubt. Like, you've got Hysterics, Mentalist, and Nate, who were already on this team. But Shibe and Tex joining just this stage. Bit of an unknown. Like, Tex hasn't been in the game for quite some time, and Shibe has never played at this level at all. And even the previous roster, this IG team, they had quite a few question marks over them. You know, people were like, oh, you know, Nate's a bit of an odd one out on this roster. Mentalist obviously hadn't had much success on Fnatic prior to joining IG. So it feels like there's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers when it comes to TYDE. And so I need more time to see them. I do, because especially last week after their game against Wildcard, I'm not filled with confidence. Only got 4 rounds in that game. And yeah, there's a lot more that we need to see out of this roster, because clearly the potential is there. It's just about being able to act on that.
Yeah, and that's probably where I think the biggest point of conversation would come about for Stage 3, Mandy, is we've got a lot of star-studded rosters. We've got a lot of new teams, kind of... I say new teams. New players on old teams that kind of form new teams in that sense. And it's really hard to gauge where they're at. Do you have any kind of hope for TYDE? Like, do you see them finishing and pushing for top 2, or do you think that this will just be one of those stages where it's about building for them?
I would have to agree with that latter statement. I think that looking at this roster of TYDE, it doesn't strike me as a roster of I suppose 5 players with skill sets that really match each other. Typically when we see roster moves, I can look at that player and go, okay, it makes sense they brought on this player because they are a great support player, or they're a great leader, or a great fragger, or something like that. When I see the roster changes that TYDE have done, it doesn't strike me immediately what these players bring to the team, and I think it's going to take them a stage to figure out exactly just how they fit together. I don't think they'll be successful right off the bat.
Well, one team that has always been successful here in APAC South is Elevate. Really, the names that we've been talking about for so long. Onigiri, what is this?
I love that you're trying to be all serious, and then we just cut to that.
That's probably the best thing to cut to. I mean, Onichat is just absolutely out of this world. Yeah, that's kind of stumped me a little bit here, Dev. But look, Elevate good.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And look, they're also nearly locked in for 6 Invitational. In fact, top 2, making it to the Major in November, top 2 out of this league, would 100% confirm 6 Invitational via points. They wouldn't have to play open qualies. Even top 4 in APAC South is upwards of a 99% chance that they will make it to that SI based on points. So really, they can be pretty modest this stage, knowing that they'll make it to SI even if they just get the top 4 here. But realistically, this team has set their sights on something much more ambitious than that. It's returning to a major, not just making playoffs like they managed to do in Berlin, but making semis, making a grand final, winning that grand final. Like, these guys believe they can do it. I wouldn't say that they are unrealistic with their expectations, but they are so ready for anything that this world throws at them. And they are ambitious, and they looked absolutely unreal in their Playday 1 game against Knights. Honestly, I haven't seen them look that good probably ever.
That's the perfect segue for that discussion of just where Elevate are at right now, Mandy. Like, there's no doubting. If we came into Stage 3 thinking, oh, I wonder what Elevate's going to do after making a quarterfinal, after having such a strong international showing, what are they going to do when they come back domestically, regionally? They have blown us out of the water. The team that we thought they would be really pushing Elevate just got obliterated by Elevate.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one. Elevate, they just look like they're on another playing field at the moment. They're just on another level. Knights, I don't really know. We'll have to see them play a little bit later on tonight to see if that was just an anomaly, a bit of a blip in the radar, or if that was how they are at the moment. But Elevate, for sure, they have on another level. And I think the addition of Laxing and that experience and the knowledge that he's been bringing to the team has really, I suppose, opened their eyes and broadened their perspective on Rainbow Six. This is such a dangerous roster with all the support staff and all the new tools that they have. We already thought they were amazing, and now they're going to get even better, and that is terrifying.
I wonder if they're going to use this as like a building stage, right? If they're going to go ahead and just try different maps and force teams into let's say, awkward positions, because that could well happen. Speaking of maps, let's have a look where we're going to be heading for this best of one. All important, Vito. Nice to see Clubhouse and Theme Park gone, but
Speaking
come on,
of
no Oregon, no Oregon, no Oregon. Oh, tell you what, but it's, I don't know, I think Guz is going to be sitting back there. He's going to be rock kicking at the moment, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, look, KAFE Dev, what do you make?
Look, good map for Elevate. I'm just getting up my old IG stats as well. But as for Elevate, last time they played this was actually against W7M, Mandy. Not sure if you recall. We casted that game. It was, in fact, the very first map. And to be frank, it was quite...
Wait, did you go to the major?
Oh, here it comes.
What? Wait, what?
So, Elevate had a very ambitious quarterfinal game against W7M, and they picked KAFE to go to, and they actually lost it. I don't know if, Mandy, you have any particular takeaways from that game, but it was definitely a rough start to the series for them, and I don't think that they showed us everything that they're capable of on that map.
Well, this is the game.
Can you confirm or deny?
Yeah, I can confirm. This is indeed the game where W7M Amaru rushed up the hatch into mining dining, and they got the plant off straight away, and Elevate were like, what on earth has just happened? I hope that doesn't happen this game as well, and they're ready for something that IG might bring out. But of course, this is a very different caliber of team, a different pacing as well. It's not every day that you go from playing a LATAM team to a brand new roster in APAC South. And so I can only imagine Elevate, they're trying to rebuild their knowledge in this map. Hopefully they've scrimmed it, VOD reviewed the last one, and bring something out that's a little bit better for this Playday.
Well, it's actually part of the discussion for Elevators. They are one of only few teams that have not made really any changes heading into Stage 3. I think only Fury and Gaming Gladiators have made no changes. So, Dev, that kind of consistency, surely you just back that in time and time again for a team like Elevate.
Look, it's true. And if you take away that one result at the major, Elevate have been really good on KAFE. They played it quite a lot in the Operation League within Southeast Asia in Stage 2, and they won it almost every single time they played it, except when they played it in APAC South against Direwolves. That was still a close 6-8 game, so I don't think they can be too upset about that, however. If you look at Stage 2 for TYDE, back when they were IG, though, KAFE was one of the most banned maps against them. In fact, every single game bar one of them, it was TYDE at the time, IG's opponent that banned out KAFE. So we haven't had a chance to see these guys play it, even the IG that was. And there is a chance because of that this could be a map where they feel quite comfortable.
I guess that's really, for me, when we're talking about, like, coming in from Stage 2 to Stage 3, especially for TYDE, losing the, maybe this is going to be a bit a hot take, but losing the two biggest names in terms of the frag power that we've seen from them, they lost Speakeasy, they lost Jigsaw. Coming into Stage 3, do you almost completely wipe the map pool away there, Mandy? Do you hold on to the remnants that was?
I think that they would hold on to a little bit of their map pool because essentially they've replaced their entry fraggers, right? Like, they're not replacing roles that are, I suppose, fundamental to the strategy, I would say. I think that being an entry or being on that roam game is a much easier skill set to slot into and learn, rather than having to learn how to set up the entire site. If you come into a team and you're the SAS site, the construction anchor, you are dead to rights. You have a whole strat book to learn, right? If you come into it as your Malusi player, the slot in is going to be much easier, which is exactly what IG have done. What TYDE have done with their new roster changes after coming out from being IG, right? So I feel like there is still some semblance of this old map pool in for them.
And when we look for, I guess, this matchup in particular, Dev, I'm probably going to start to ask for predictions on where we actually think this is going. Obviously, Elevate through and through, but are we expecting TYDE to be able to keep this close, knowing, all the turmoil, if you will? I mean, that's a really aggressive way of saying it, but, all the changes that they've gone through?
Look, it is very hard to back in TYDE for a solid chance here. Not only is Elevate historically quite comfortable and happy to go to KAFE. They've had a lot of wins on it in the past. Their form is looking really, really strong after their game last week. It was not that Knights had a bad day. It was that Elevate were looking probably the best that we have ever seen them. If they can do that in the server today, realistically, I'd be surprised if TYDE does much better than Knights did. That's just the nature of the matchup between these teams right now. In my opinion, like Elevate is just that good. And if there's anything going for TYDE, it's the fact that according to what I've got here in the League Ops sheet, TYDE do start on the defensive side, which historically is looking more favored on KAFE. So thankfully for these guys, they do have a bit of that boon coming on their side. They might be able to get a bit of momentum early in the game, but realistically, I think Elevate have got their number.
It is kind of crazy when talking about KAFE and having a look at the statistics and everything and how much it's changed. I think very much KAFE, Andy, is kind of like Oregon, right? Like we used to see 75% defensive win rates on the cocktail as it was for the basement on Oregon. And then the other maps were kind of, the other sites were where things started to fall at the wayside a little bit more. Are we expecting for TYDE, you know, to kind of stick to those easier defaults? Like you're saying, you know, we've still got the shot callers on the team. We've still got much of the structure left. Where are we looking for them to double down on in this?
Well, I think for TYDE, just to be realistic, that it's a new roster. Yes, you can keep your map pool, but you can only learn so much in the short amount of time that they've been together. I don't think that we're going to see a very extensive strat book or anything absolutely absurd and crazy coming out of them. They still need time to just figure it out, and figuring it out, getting that flow together as a team does mean playing something a little bit more basics, something a little bit more standard, as you would want to say. For Elevate, though, I would want to flip the story and say, Elevate, this is clearly a map that they've played, but they're unhappy with, and they want to work on. We've seen them play it time and time again to mix success, and each time they change up a little bit of their strat book. They seem to want to test the waters here on this particular map on KAFE, and I think if you're TYDE going into that's pretty scary to want to take Elevate to this. They definitely have a very, very interesting approach to KAFE that we don't normally see this flourished and this mature in APAC South.
Well, I guess that's the scary part now, right, is with Laxing coming on, Dev, not only will we see Elevate, you know, trial new maps, but trial new strategies as well. So are we expecting anything out of the ordinary? Do you think coming into this that this is kind of one of those opportunities where they go, right, TYDE, we should be beating them, right? So we've got a little bit of leniency to do some things.
Yeah, I think that every team in APAC South takes every game one at a time. Elevated, no exceptions. Not going to take any game for granted. Not that that's what you were implying, but they're not going to like, oh, let's just try stuff out. If they're trying stuff out, they're trying it because they've practiced it and they believe in it, or they have the confidence and the conviction to do that. And yes, I think they will be trying new things because that's the reason why they brought Laxing in. They want to learn from a player as experienced as Laxing from a region like North America that has recently won world championships and majors. Funnily enough, as you brought up Laxing, I was actually looking up Oxygen's results to see if they were a good KAFE team. And historically, at least in the last couple of months, all right, like they beat Mirage back when Mirage were doing terrible in Stage 2, and they had a close loss to Space Station. So I'm not going to say that Laxing is necessarily the resident expert on KAFE. Might not be his favorite map, might be, you'd have to ask him. But I think that regardless, Elevate are in peak form, and I do back them into this game. Every round that the TYDE guys can get on their defense will make this a lot more tolerable for them.
We like, you know, the and ifs or buts, but it's time for us to move away from this. If Dev and Mandy is dandy, is Xenox and Gazuz? Let's go to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one way you could go with it, Rob, but moving forward, of course, and keeping a bit of professionalism to the broadcast, big game here for TYDE, Guz. As we kind of touched on a little bit in the pre-show discussion, you can only have so many regulation losses when you've only got basically 6 games for the stage. They've already had 1 to wildcard. You lose this to Elevate, and I would then have to say they can then basically not drop a game for the rest of the stage.
Yeah, 100%. It's basically must win. At minimum, TYDE need an OT to keep their head above the water. They're versing Elevate. They showed last week they are absolutely cracked at the moment. So it's a scary game for TYDE, but they start on defense KAFE, so anything's possible.
For Elevate, though, obviously, they were in tremendous form back on Playday 1 last week against the Knights. Absolutely tore them apart. Probably the most clinical performance I've actually seen in APAC history in terms of really the APAC League since its iteration. I can't think of a more clean performance than that. Even though it was a 7-1, honestly should have been a 7-0. Knights were just basically unable to match them. Knights were even trying so many different tactics to get themselves back into the game. Elevate just shut all of them down. They were just too far and away the better team. So a big test for TYDE. Definitely the clear underdogs. Must put that out. I mean, I saw even the Twitch chat predictions before, guys, and it was like 90% in favor of Elevate. So TYDE very much the underdogs in this game.
In terms of the ban phase thus far, Nook off the board, expected over a 90% ban rate globally. Flores up second, a lot of util clear opportunities here on KAFE on every objective. Valk will see a return once more into the ban fray. You can gain a lot of information, even post nerf. Inside, those cameras can be deadly. And then, of course, the Azami to round things off. Overall, one of the most powerful defenders in the game right now. Those keeper barriers are very difficult to deal with, and it will play no further part in this match. We head up to the top floor for the first round. Let's see if TYDE can get themselves off to a good start.
Yeah, and TYDE's going to be the focus here early on in this first half on the defensive KAFE, guys. They have to be, right? Especially on this map, defensively, need to be 4-2 minimum. So really all eyes is going to be on sort of how they defend and where Elevate can maybe look to break down this defense. TYDE, the underdogs, can they get off to a good start? They basically have to, right? I mean, if Elevate start getting attacking rounds on the board early here on KAFE, it's not going to be good news. It's not going to be good signs. So even just this opening round, you kind of look at what they're bringing to the table. You see the Capcan from Mentalist, everything else pretty stock standard. Shibe on the Warden, but ultimately it's up to Elevate. What are they going to bring to this? And immediately you see Sapper attack a repick onto the Ying. You got the Dokkaebi, so I'm intriguing to see whether or not Elevate go full gung-ho. Do they go aggressive, or do they play that sort of coordinated style that we saw very much on Bank back in Playday 1?
As expected here on KAFE, it's going to be a top-down approach from Elevate. Focus over towards Red Stairs initially to get control there, transition that into shop, then lounge. See if they can try and get an execute on towards the objective itself. Questions will now start to be raised as to how aggressively TYDE want to respond. Sterix is inside of shop. Not too much utility to back him up though. And he has been droned out. It's not a position you want to hold on to if you don't have a shield, if you don't have some ADS devices to support, and he elects to fall back.
Top red control established already for Elevate very early on in the piece as well. And for TYDE, how they're sort of going to be defending this is not really any pressure on top red, but a couple of players pushing down and up white stairs. First kill is Hysterics. That does go down. Good news for Elevate, and they get rid of the mute, but the gem is still out there. Drones going out. Do get stopped over towards the Gar shop, but I mean, already you could start to feel Elevate putting the pressure on early. They got that opening kill. They get into work really quickly too with the utility game as well around top red, opening up this wall, trying to get position. This is just all Elevate so far. TYDE need to probably try and find a way into this round. Otherwise, they're just going to sit back and allow Elevate to push onto site.
Mentalist on a good roam down below. That Nitro cell could have an impact. Once Elevate push forth, even Mark could be a threat. And that's exactly what happens. Mentalist below, detonates and finds him. A 4 versus 4. Mentalist's position likely now reveal, or at least Elevate will be suspect of the roamer down below when he gets away. Elsewhere, Onigiri pushes forward. It's a sharp shot with the DMR. That forfeits pixel control now to Elevate.
Yeah, and good push there from Onigiri, understanding that Mentalist down below throws out that Nitro Cell. One's already dead, so you push out. You know there's one probably holding pixel. You almost play the numbers game in your head and think, well, as to where they could sort of be located and where I can sort of push out safely. And yeah, Elevate just on top of this, even forcing Nate back down below. I mean, this is just a complete one-sided affair. Considering for Bar Cocktail, you would generally see a bit of a late plant. Attackers, you know, not struggling to get control, but generally going for that late 20-second execute. It's also early into the game. I mean, Onigiri just has that corridor on lockdown. 3 kills, complete control. Clear the pixel player, push up towards washroom side, clear the corridor. Nate's the last one. He has to push up through that barbed wire. Onigiri hears him. Onigiri sees him. Onigiri kills him. It's a 4K. It's all too easy for Elevate in the opening round.
And it's really become a hallmark of Onigiri, his use of the DMR. Made famous on Aruni on defense, but now transitioning and translating well to the attack. Good entry over towards Pixel. Got a replay of that now, and then just continued his march down that white corridor. No one really to stop him. Information being fed by the team, and Onigiri prepped and ready, aggroing towards the end, and then Nate, who was stuck down below for a good 20-30 seconds, made to pay on his return. And overall, again, It is so hard at the moment to find faults in Elevate's game plan. It was very tricky against the Knights, and based on that first round, it might be hard once more here against TYDE.
The replay perfectly sort of highlighting there the one-man show from Onigiri. Takes out the pixel play, takes out the washrooms play, takes out the player holding just outside Cocktail. I mean, he's literally clean swept that entire side of the floor. That's a horrible defense from TYDE. They just get punished, but full credit has to go to Onigiri. Just clean with it. Didn't even necessarily need much help from anyone else. Didn't really see anything from Sapper, nothing from DCH. So, I mean, it was not even a full team performance there from Elevate, just Onigiri doing Onigiri things. So we head down below Kitchen Cooking now here for the second round. TYDE just really not involved in that round, besides Mentalist, who did make a really good play with the Nitro Cell, found another kill elsewhere. No one else able to fire a shot. All the pressure stemming from Elevate. TYDE never even given a chance to fight back.
Extensive roam here from TYDE for the second round. The lineup from Elevate suggesting perhaps a direct approach could be on the agenda with the Monty. Those ROUs from Mark, but we'll have to wait and see. There is also intentions above for Mr. Punch to clear out those positions, or at least pressure the roamers. Keeping in mind that if you want to get Baku control, entry into his prep could be tricky. Onigiri, DMR in hand once more, already posing a threat. Sapper just guards the line at the moment. Elevate want control.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan, really, of the stands. That's about it. I think, other than that, I don't mind this with the Montang, considering you've got a lot of anti-droning from the side of TYDE. Don't necessarily want to get too much information from the drones. And so, therefore, if droning is going to be a bit of an issue, why not just send in the Montang to do it really instead? Full vision now of Bakery, how they can sort of then play off of that. Onigiri brings out the Gon 6 to get rid of that Sawyer Gate. And there's the ping. Now you push out. There is a play, I think, over towards prep side. There's trades that do go out. So far, TYDE have actually played this not too bad. Mark sitting outside, not really able to get too involved, but it's Mr. Punch. Pushes in, gets 2 kills, playing off the Montang perfectly. Advantage Elevate once again. Down to just Nate and Hysterics for TYDE.
Yeah, it's been really sharp from both teams, but the man advantage and the information advantage for Elevate's crucial. Hysterics was in a position, but he was droned out. Looking to maybe find a delayed trade now cut off. Sapper has that diffuser in hand. He'll want to try and get entry. Nate's up above. So this could fall apart really quickly for TYDE once Elevate have a read.
Still a minute left in this round. A lot of time. Elevate do not have to rush this, but Mark surely starts to look to push forward. Bit of a high ground there view. Punch goes down. Hysterics obviously having some of his vision blocked off by the ROU. Mark now pushes in through Bakery, can get the revival to Mr. Punch. So that time now ends up being a factor here. Elevate were able to use a little bit of it to just sort of get themselves back up, get themselves in a position to finish this round off. I would be surprised if Hysterics and Nate can clutch this, especially now with Sapper putting that plant down. Mr. Punch watching for the flank, watching and waiting, gets the headshot, goes for maybe the trade, didn't eventuate though. Nate hasn't really been able to fire a shot until just then. Headshot with the SMG-11, takes out Mr. Punch, but he's got the shieldy boy in his face, tries to get rid of him. Sapper, low on health, doesn't even know where he's getting shot from, almost got the turnaround onto Mark. But Elevate get the job done. Elevate make it 2 attacking rounds in a row here on KAFE.
Once more, relatively clinical there from Elevate. The biggest hurdle really was clearing out that Bakery control. Perhaps in hindsight could have been a bit more efficient with a nade from the Yana, but nonetheless they made it work. And TYDE, to their credit as well, locked it down pretty nicely. For a brief moment it was a 3 versus 3, but then they just bled that additional pick. And that allowed Elevate to have a little bit more confidence getting in towards site. And despite it being a little bit scrappy, Elevate able to tidy it up, find those picks, get the round. Now staring down the barrel of 3 straight.
Terrifying start for TYDE here on KAFE defense, 2 rounds down already. The one good sign, I guess, you're moving over to a site that typically is quite strong for defenders in reading fireplace. I'm assuming they'll play up above. Cocktail, just a disaster start. Everything that could go wrong so far has gone wrong. And already, I guess in some ways, guys, signs of last week here from Elevate in that they are just clearly the better team. We are not seeing necessarily TYDE making massive mistakes. Elevate are just so in control that the opposition can't even play the game.
Yeah, in my opinion, they're the only team we've seen so far this stage, albeit only what, a Playday and a bit so far. That are sort of playing as a hive mind, as a good team does in Siege, where a lot of it is they just know where their opponents are, where their teammates are at every moment. They're never second guessing. They're never being stalled out. They're committing to a plan and they're executing it really well. And expecting that to flow on here, which would be devastating for TYDE. It's never great to be on the defense at the start of a match and losing the first 3 rounds, because then you start scratching your head as to where you are going to start mounting rounds. So we'll see how they play this one out. Kitchen was somewhat close in the early to mid portion of the round, and we'll see how they try and contest this early control from Elevate this time.
Onto the Alibi now for Tex and away from the Mozzie. Elevate bringing that line, Ying combo. So deadly for those late round executions. A little bit quiet at the moment though to start with. In fact, the first Candela does go out, and I do sense maybe a potential to completely ignore Cocktail here and come in through pillars. Punch already there, clearing out that 90 position. Tex takes a bit of damage. Onigiri still top red. Knows there's a play pushing out. Not sure about that from Shibe, but he wins it anyway. For the one time that Onigiri loses out that fight, it's got a big effect. A domino effect, in fact, for Elevate. That will be the round over, and TYDE finally get a round win. They needed that, and even though it's just the 1 round win, it's clean at least. 1v5, DCH still on the roof. A couple of kills all just sort of flowing out together at the same time. And really had nothing to do with the site. More so just Elevate's positioning, more so going towards that pillar position early, guys, rather than a top clear approach over towards Cocktail. Elected to go the floor below instead.
Yeah, it just disrupted a little bit of that structure that Elevate had established, and it's a nice round for them. DCH now will take a bit of a vacation here on the roof. Teams will typically do this if they've lost early picks and there's no realistic chance of them winning a round. It's a chance for Elevate to take an unofficial tactical timeout. Well played though by TYDE. They needed a round. That's what they've been able to achieve. And a good little kickstart for them in this match. Just keeping Elevate on their toes, who have only lost now a couple of rounds throughout 2 play days. And if they start getting tested, perhaps then the resilience of Elevate may come into question. Historically, though, it has been quite good. Certainly an improvement from past years where Elevate sometimes crumbled under a bit of pressure. DCH just taps away at the roof now. Round will come to a close. And he won't retain the KD. It's a flawless round for TYDE. Just keeping this match interesting.
Yeah, and obviously the pressure you're speaking of, I think, are moments where in the past, without wanting to sort of bring it up, because they've been so great recently.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, you can't,
those
you
old
can't pick
days,
at them. You can't pick at those old scars, mate. Open them up.
obviously not quite as relevant these days, thankfully for Elevate fans, but way too early in the season to even be remotely thinking about that. Big round win though for TYDE. The way that they won the round though, guys, probably doesn't necessarily fill you with confidence that they can replicate that. Just felt like a bit of a gunfight round. They hit some headshots, won a couple of swings, won some peaks. Doesn't really come to the nature of, say, defending a site or playing a util game. So a lot more work to be done here for TYDE. Those are the kind of rounds you probably don't want to bank on replicating. Still, it's a round, you'll take it, and does maybe get a little bit to the momentum of Elevate.
Back to Kitchen now, and I'm somewhat surprised Elevate not jumping back onto the Monty for that bakery control. I felt like it did work quite nicely and fed a lot of information to the attack. Sapper will be the only repick this time onto the Jackal, and that may be in response to Nate jumping onto the Cav, roaming once more up above, and an operator that sees infrequent use in pro play, typically because you respect the attack enough to anticipate her ability to be ineffective. But Nate trying to catch them off guard here. We'll see how much of an impact those Sappers repick will have in hunting down this roamer and potentially finding Elevator pick that's relatively uncontested.
Yeah, and I do like this as well. I think when you think about sort of Elevate and their mindset is sort of playing a game of, in a style of Siege that's going to hold up internationally. So why not just try and bring some of that APAC mentality, be aggressive, spawn peek, play Cav, and try and shoot them in the back rather than in front, and instead of trying to go toe-to-toe with them, try and cheat them if you really can, and be aggressive and play off meta. And it may actually just result in you getting the results you need locally to get results against Elevate. You try and fight fire with fire, and obviously Elevate's a team that has all that international experience. It's been much spoken about Laxing coming into the team, and their approach and their mindset coming into really this stage of APAC South, wanting to play like they're a style of siege that's going to hold up internationally. Well, into that knowledge. Don't play into them.
Might not have too much of an impact though if Elevate don't go up above and roam around the map. Instead, just surveying Bakery at the moment, waiting for the opportunity to progress forward. DCH on the back push might be able to link up with Mr. Punch near front door, offer some pressure near VIP and just make the squeeze a little bit tighter here. But Nate actually does find a pick onto Mark, Tex onto DCH, and again, much like the last round, Elevate finding the initial entry very, very tricky.
Yeah, and it's because off angles here from Nate, off position, so Mark just gets kind of caught out, and he's probably wondering why is he there or what's going on. This is a little bit odd. This is not strange. Why is he just sitting in coat check, or maybe why is he not just sort of up above, waiting for us to push him and clear top down? So these are the kind of things that can throw Elevate off their game. If they come in with a game plan and it's unable to be executed, what's their plan B? If plan B is to kind of go back to the way things used to be, well, they're going to probably struggle a little bit because they've been so focused on plan A. Shibe with a great shot. The DMR is able to be used by all parties involved, not just Onigiri. Down, but not out just yet. 2 versus 5. I think the round, though, looking to go the way of TYDE. And it also means it'll be 2 rounds in a row where it's largely off-site. It's largely catching Elevate off guard, and it's largely because Elevate just can't get into the flow of things. Sapper not even checking his left side. They just walk into the TYDE firing line. 2-2. We have a game here on KAFE.
Yeah, and I think we're basically seeing the discussion that you were having earlier, Jake, where TYDE are approaching the match from a different angle. Instead of maybe how the Knights approached it last week was, let's do our game plan, let's do what we know works. They're instead going for the left of field approach and trying something that perhaps Elevate aren't anticipating or wouldn't expect. And it worked in that last round really well. Nate, funnily enough, did get the entry. And they're going to repeat it here for round 5. Cav once more selected here, this time by Mentalist. And if TYDE go 3 straight with these strats and this approach, that's when I start to really get concerned for Elevate, because it's all well and dandy to take on good teams and play against the structured siege, but if you're going to get thrown off by a team, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible, TYDE, they're a relatively new roster with their additions, probably one not contesting for the top 2. If you're getting caught off by this stuff, it certainly raises eyebrows, and it's all well and good for Elevate to struggle against this on an international stage, because they're not going to be versing it on an international stage, but to get there, they need to be taking down these domestic teams, and any loss is a huge loss with only 6 games, and you would hate for one of them, of your potential 2 chances, to be against this sort of playstyle.
Still early days, though. Only now into the 5th round. Nate so close to finding that opening kill. Close yet so far. Come away with it, but just kind of, it's almost like a mental game now, right? Elevate just feel like they can't push in. They're going to get peaked, they're going to get swung. The pressure from TYDE telling in the first 2 rounds, it was just all Elevate. You know why? Because TYDE was sitting back on site. TYDE were allowing Elevate into the building. They were allowing them to set up, get top red control, clear out utility. Now, they're making life way more difficult for Elevate. Elevate have to fight their way into the building. They have to scrap and punch. It's not all that clean, fancy gameplay and structure that they've learnt from overseas. Back into the fighting pit of APAC, which Elevate have risen above time and time again, but will have to do so again in this game. Minute 48, and they're still not even really into the building. Such a stark contrast to the opening round.
And last time they attacked this site, they were straight down red, opening up the wall really early. Hysterics was pushed off much earlier than this as well, but eventually now will relocate. So now we would anticipate the attack to start getting a foothold down below, but even still, Elevate still stalled out. And I think the remnants of the last 2 rounds are playing in the backs of their minds now. They're being super slow and super methodical, probably droning additional corners they otherwise wouldn't to make sure that they can get inside. But it's Onigiri, much like that last attempt upstairs, to step up. He gets another pick with the DMR. The drop now to follow. Elevate with 60 seconds to work with. Hysterics, though, with the down.
Oh, and he should get the confirmation. Does lose his life for it, but in the end, 1 for 1. Not the end of the world. Of course, Onigiri's opening kill still does mean Elevate have the advantage with under a minute left. And it's only really now that they're getting that top red control. Still players on site as well for TYDE. Elevate's running out of time as well. They haven't cleared out washrooms. Pixel Tex probably doesn't have to get too overly aggressive here. Don't put yourself in a position for Onigiri. You know he's on the rappel. You peek it anyway, and you give him that chance. Nate getting lit up on the balcony. TYDE falling apart. Elevate scrapping their way in this round, but they are pulling it off, and it's courtesy of Onigiri on the rappel.
The last few rounds have just been so volatile that Elevate on top this time, and Onigiri once more, DMR for the swing. Good entry, good closure, and Elevate stabilized the match a little bit.
It started well again for TYDE. There were good signs. Sort of spoke about the fact that top red control hadn't necessarily been established in a quick manner for Elevate. Saw Nate again going for a spawn peek. Okay, didn't work out. Was it neutral in the end anyway? Nothing really came from it either way, but the signs that the last 2 rounds from TYDE were once again in effect early in that 5th round was a stark contrast to the opening 2 rounds. But a little bit of help and a little bit of patience from Onigiri, finds a couple of kills. They played really well into having Onigiri watching that sightline towards washrooms. Pixel. In the end, patience was a virtue for Elevate. 3-2 scoreline. 3-3 half. Not that bad in the end for TYDE, but think about KAFE, generally 4-2 to the defenders. It's generally the pass mark. They'll take 3-3 though against such a strong caliber of opponent.
5 seconds to insertion. Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb.
TYDE returning to structure here for the 6th round. No Cav in sight. No notable pocket picks either. Very standard. And an extension up above. As to not allow Elevate to get vertical too easily. And this is where Elevate should arguably actually be a little bit more comfortable. It's where they look comfortable in the beginning of this match, and putting aside those turbulent rounds, no reason why they can't return to form. Interesting lurk down below here though from DCH, just gathering some information. Got to say that's potentially a little bit dangerous unless they know that the Cav's not in play. As Onigiri again just does Onigiri things. That's Tex taken down. He was playing Pixel.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
we
big
know
opener.
Elevate is a team that doesn't rely on Onigiri, right? Like, it's not like if Onigiri doesn't pop off, they don't win. We've seen countless games where Onigiri has a quiet game and the others stand up, but Onigiri sometimes just has those kind of games where he just pops off and the rest of his teammates sit back and just allow him to sort of lead the way. This is one of those games. 10-3, double digits inside of the first half. Big kill for Mr. Punch as well from Red Stairs. A lot going the way now of Elevate to close out this half. There was that brief moment of hope for TYDE after 2 round wins in a row, but how quickly it has vanished. 90 seconds left. Can they pull off a miracle to salvage this half?
Structure's not standing for TYDE. DCH now with the diffuser for entry and train on at least some information with the Gemini. Hysterics is really the last wall of defense here. He needs to take at least 1 or 2 members of Elevate with him to the grave, otherwise the chances of them winning the round drop even more so. Damage done and an impact for extra pressure. But he's back quite literally against the wall, and Elevate will desperately want to clear this.
50 seconds left. Next kill so important if it goes the way of TYDE. Bit of damage onto Mr. Punch, and that's now 3 members of Elevate low on health. Red ping goes out, gonna land it, can't. DCH, a big win. Getting rid of Hysterics. Further compounding this round now onto TYDE's shoulders. Nate, high ground, good vision. But he really needs to be on site at this point. He's watching that entryway, looking for the rush in of DCH and Co. Going for that plan. He allows him in, can't land the shots, does eventually follow the spray. And the spray, unfortunately though, isn't going to be enough. Losing Shibe. He found the kill into Onigiri, can drop balcony. Down into pillars, Mark gets off the plant. There's 3 watching the doorway. Nate is just being watched. An elevator just too good. A 4-2 half on the attack of KAFE.
Certainly looked a little bit dangerous there towards the end, and a decent effort from Nate, but unfortunately by that point the damage done. 2 picks early from Elevate, ripping that structure apart that TYDE tried to re-establish in this match. And funnily enough, the only 2 rounds TYDE win on their defense is with the pocket picks and with the intention of throwing Elevate off. So effective in that sense, but ultimately Elevate outclassing their opponents. 4 rounds to kick things off. The advantage heading on to a defensive KAFE effort. This should be over at this point. For TYDE though, they'll want to try and keep fighting hard. At the very least, push OT if possible. But Elevate, I think, will be comfortable and difficult to push over.
I think it's even further good news for Elevate, right? In the sense that they got challenged a little bit there in that first half. 2-2 scoreline, 2 rounds in a row to TYDE. Had they maybe figured out some kind of style to take down Elevate, what do Elevate do? They respond immediately. They don't go into their shells. They just keep fighting. They get aggressive. They look for opening kills. They change it up, just little tweaks here or there. Obviously, the Cav, you might have said, cuz once is fine, 2's a little bit silly, and that probably backfired a bit for TYDE. And even further bad news, although maybe a rehost might be in order here with Shibe disconnecting very early on in this round, but does kind of feel like Elevate have sort of overcome the worst of it. Have they really swatted the best that TYDE has to offer? Well, we'll see, of course, going into this second half. I highly doubt it's going to be an attacker side at KAFE. I would be very surprised. I think it's looking a little bit gloom here for TYDE.
Yeah, certainly so. It's very difficult to bet against Elevate in this position. The round advantage heading onto defense and overall just playing really tidy. The thing will be, does TYDE, much like their defense, try to employ these, I guess, brazen strategies to throw off their opponents? I'm thinking the likes of Amaru, Ying, Lion, some of those really oppressive operators, if played well, may be enough to get them over the line, or at the very least mount a couple of rounds and plant the seed of doubt in the minds of Elevate. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge, and I'm sure they'll be using this opportunity now during the rehost to have a quick chat and try to work out how they are going to win this game.
Yeah, and I think when you kind of look at this TYDE roster and you look at some of the star power and pretty much clearly a lot of experience when it comes to this roster, and yet they are just being really sort of torn apart by Elevate, and they won't be the only team. But you do have to sort of wonder what really is the limit for TYDE at this stage. You've already lost the wild card, arguably on the verge of losing to Elevate. It would then be 2 regulation losses to start the stage, guys. They actually get Playday 3 off. So TYDE is the team having their bye week next week. It does, I guess, give them a little bit of a chance to go back. The VODs, watch their games from wildcard, Elevate, learn, respond. Then they play the Knights. You lose that, you're out. Then you got Direwolves, you lose that, you're out. Then you got Chi-Chi, you lose that, you're out. And then Fury and Playday 7. So, I mean, arguably speaking, it's extraordinarily unlikely to see TYDE finishing in the top 2. It would take a massive turn in form and in fortunes. So what is the goal for them this stage then?
Very good question. I think for TYDE, it's about consolidating for the future, whatever that may look like for them. Obviously, it's a bit of a weird stage for them in the sense that Invictus Gaming did depart, but fortunately Mentalist Nate and Hysterics did stay together, so the roster continues on. So it's a great opportunity, at least individually, for them to show off what they've got for any moves going forward. Because top 2 is a very ambitious goal. It's going to be very tough, and it's tricky to see them being in that discussion. If they lose here, for example, right, they basically already got a line through their name. So we'll see how they go, but they can only put their best foot forward. Elevate's of course, to reiterate for probably the 1000th time already, this broadcast, an incredibly strong team at the moment. They're in great form, and they have a lot of experience. So it's just trying to make the most of the situation.
No, it's only the one sort of Playday to kind of look at in terms of some of the player statistics, but when you look at Elevate, really to start that opening week, back in Playday 1 last week against the Knights, really kind of set them up for it. But the top 3 rated players basically from that opening week was DCH, Sapper, and Mr. Punch. It wasn't even Onigiri in that top 3. In fact, he had somewhat of a quiet game, guys. He was only 6-4 and +2 KD. What does he do? Pops out week 2. He goes 10 in the first half. So it really does consolidate the fact that they're not a one-man show. Sometimes you might get, say, a casual viewer that comes in. It's like, obviously seen Elevate internationally. It's Onigiri again carrying this team. No. It's not always the case. They don't rely on Onigiri. He just so happens to every now and then really go nuclear. But the likes, I mean, Sapper was the highest rated player last stage for all of APAC South. He was the best player, right, in the entire stage. Then you added in Mark and Mr. Punch and what they've been able to contribute. DCH obviously had a fantastic game against the Knights. It's such a well-rounded roster. Then you add in an amazing coach in Laxing. And then you add in the fact that they've obviously started to take an approach of playing a little bit more like those international teams that they're playing against at majors. They want to compete there. They want to be able to have their game plan stand up internationally and not just win in APAC. It is really the only team in APAC South, and honestly, I'll even say it, probably in all of APAC, including APAC North, that I think has a chance to actually win a major. I don't see, and it's not even close. Not even close, guys. There's no other team as close as Elevate in APAC right now.
Wow, APAC South bias for me there. That's so disappointing. No. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that discussion maybe a couple stages ago, maybe back in stage 1 or even like stage 3, 2021, could have been a little bit different, where we were seeing teams from North actually perform quite well, namely Damwon Kia, but there's been a drop-off. There has been. I can't really put it much more nicely than that. There has been. And where some of those teams have dropped off, others have risen, and Elevate's the best example of that. They've made roster changes, they've made staffing changes, they've changed the way they approach the game and now look like a serious international team. And the results reflect that. And I think if they keep going at it, they're not going to be too far away from maybe being APAC's hope at winning an international event. Whether it will be this major, who knows? Still a long way away from even qualifying for that event. And then the secondary discussion to that, of course, is Six Invitational, where if they qualify for this third major, they're all but confirmed to qualify for that. And that's another good chance for them to show what they've got and fly the flag proudly for APAC, because there is, again, a very large skill gap still between Elevate and whoever you want to name as the second best team in APAC. I think that discussion could go on forever, because there clearly isn't a second best team in APAC, in my opinion, at least.
I think when you look at sort of Elevate, they are the golden standard when it comes to being a team that had eyes on reaching the likes of the majors and the SIs. And once you get there, not being, I guess, a team that's just happy with that, you know, being content with just making a major or just making SI. They want to go that one step further. They want to win the whole thing. I think we've seen teams in the past, and I'm not going to name teams' names because it's not a bad thing necessarily, but there's probably been teams that have fought tooth and nail to get to a major. Then they get there and it's just like happy days. We've already done the hard part. Now we kind of enjoy being at the major, and then we'll come back and do it again. This is a team that has been, and just wants to come back and win the thing. And this is kind of just like a stepping stone to them now, right? So their mindset and their attitude is by far and away the best that we have in APAC. And hopefully it's you know, that golden standard. You look at a team like Gaming Gladiators, I think a good example, right? Probably where Elevate was at, maybe we'll say a year ago, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, guys. And so can they replicate sort of this journey that Elevate has taken on? I do apologize, everyone. Obviously, we are not on the podcast mode for no particular reason. We did have the rehost initially for Shibe, which then turned into a secondary issue with a player's PC. So it has been issue into issue, hence the extended little intermission here. Do apologize, but obviously good talking points that we don't always get sort of the time of day on these broadcasts to go into, which is the larger grand scheme of things. We kind of just keep everything condensed to the matches themselves, but I think it's always a really good talking point when we get into the conversations surrounding the region really as a whole. both South and North are the teams that are representing this region going over to Majors and obviously SI. And when you probably posed that question before, guys, who would be the second best team? I'm not going to speculate with North, but when it comes to South, it is actually very tricky. It probably has to be Game and Gladiators right now. I think they would have earned that right to be considered the second best team, being the fact that they were the second best team last stage, and the performance that we saw to start Playday 2 as well really does sort of bode well for them. So would you agree, as of right now, it's Elevate 1, GG 2?
I would say GG.
I'm saying right now. If you have to say right now.
Maybe it's my Oz bias. I really want the Knights' name to be in that discussion, but I'm also a facts man. I'm also a numbers man, and yeah, they finished second. They've got more SI points. They did okay at the major, and the Knights simply don't have those credits next to their name. So we'll see if that discussion maybe shifts heading into this stage, as we've mentioned a few times now. Elevate pretty much solidifying their spot as number one and expecting that to not change. They should be finishing first in APAC South and overall be the best team in APAC, but second's very much up for grabs. I think the Knights could have a really good stage again and be fighting for it, and potentially maybe some of those other teams in the mid-table, like Diables, for example. And of course, it's important to remember that last stage did go down to that very final Playday between the Knights and GG. Literally the matter of a couple of rounds in it. So yeah, I think second is very hotly contested, and that's probably, for me at least, the most exciting storyline outside of Elevate's international aspirations going forward.
Obviously, when you take into account APAC North, I think Cyclops is a team that has garnered that kind of respect, similar to Elevate, been around for so long. Same roster as well for so long. Always hard to look past them. Obviously, you sort of mentioned Damwon Gaming here before. Yeah, a little drop off, obviously, in recent times. But yeah, ultimately, I think right now with where APAC is at, it almost feels like a lot of that weight is on the Elevate shoulders to perform internationally. And I think that, you know, the question then begs, is APAC South going to be a good enough training ground, I guess, before the next major, respectively, than SI? Are they getting enough to be able to put them in a position to actually win a major? I think in recent stages gone by, the answer would be yes. As of right now, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I do kind of feel like they've actually separated themselves. And I think that's more so because Elevate's gotten better rather than everyone's gotten worse. I feel like in previous stages, it was, you know, maybe Elevate were a little bit better, but everyone else was pretty close. But yeah, I do wonder if that may have an impact. If Elevate want to go to that next step, and they are that good, and they've got these new strategies, are they going to be able to get the most out of themselves in APAC South? That's going to be a question, obviously, where maybe the answer will be after the next major, after SI. A long, long way from knowing those sort of equations. Of course, reminder everyone here for Playday 2 of APAC South, we are in essentially a double rehost, which then turned into
triple.
Well, technically a triple.
Oh, baby,
go with that.
Triple.
Go with 3 rehosts back to back to back. We are at the moment halfway through this match, exactly halfway through, a 4-2 half, an attacking 4-2 half from Elevate on KAFE, largely leading this one quite comfortably and should be able to get the job done, I think, quite comfortably. Probably 7-3, 7-2 maybe even. We do then have one more game after this, so obviously Knights versus Fury to come, and just, I guess, maybe speaking about some of the hypotheticals on that game, guys, must win for Knights. And when I say must win, I literally mean must win. They can't lose that game.
Well, they can lose it, but then they're
probably
not making the major.
That's true.
Yeah,
they can lose it. They won't be making the major.
Yeah, 100%
at all.
Yeah, I think that's actually going to be a really exciting game. Probably the sleeper of all three heading into the evening. I think for Fury, they're still in the mix to get some points in that one, but obviously for the Knights, they'll be hungry to bounce back and prove that they weren't playing too badly in the first Playday, and Elevate really are just on another level. But on the topic of Elevate, we're back in the server. The Siege gods have shown their mercy, for us at least. I think Elevate's opponents have also been shown mercy because the rehosts have stopped any hopes of speedrun records being...
It's funny, we had this last week with Elevate Knights too, guys, if you remember, to end the night And at the time we said that the rehost was longer than the game itself. I don't think we're quite in that territory here with this one. TYDE hasn't been all that bad, especially the 2 rounds that they won. I thought they actually looked very good and clearly came in with sort of a mindset to play a little bit more off meta, to take down Elevate, catch them off a little bit. But second half finally underway. Finally a switching of the half, of course. Elevate now on the defense, TYDE on the offense. See what Elevate look to bring to the table. And it's straight away, it's a double run out actually. Mark goes down. Second player for Elevate did hop back in through the window, and well, yeah, that's not worked out at all. Kobe from Nate. There goes Mr. Punch. He was actually the other player that went for the run out. So Mark and Mr. Punch have gone for a little tag team run out, and they've both died to Nate. How often do you see that?
Maybe some ants in the pants of Elevate. They're restless after the rehost, but ill-advised. When Elevate looked their best in the first half, it's because they were playing slow, safe, structured Siege. They come out of the gates, try that, and get punished by Nate, nonetheless, who was sort of the protagonist of that on TYDE's defenses. So very strange from Elevate, but props to TYDE for shutting it down. And it now puts the rest of the defense in an awkward position. Onigiri train, Sapper holding Pixel up above, and DCH near sight. Still work to be done here for TYDE, but the start's been good.
Obviously, because of the rehost, we don't have those player KDAs anymore, but a reminder for those that missed the first half, Onigiri is on a heater. 10 and 3 in the first half, so a tremendous performance from the superstar of Elevate. Still alive in this round. Chance. Still make something happen. Text top red, minute and a half left in the 7th round, and this would be such a big start for TYDE. DCH though, hello, he finds the kill onto Shebate. Bit of a freebie back the other way for Elevate, and just gives them a little bit of hope here in this 7th round.
And I think Sapper up above may have been misdroned. We saw his POV briefly, and the drone did fly past. There is a repel now though on his position, so Sapper needs to be mindful, and Nate confirms that. Locates the Rooney, who's now forced back. Sterix gets a pick elsewhere. That was on Onigiri near train as he takes pillar control. Now Elevate forced to make a play, but shut down as Sterix reads into it over towards that reading corridor. Now DCH on site needs to perform something special. Only 40 seconds for TYDE, but that should be plenty in this advantage.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from TYDE this round, but it's clearly an Elevate mishap. Right, when you look at this round. Oh, DCH, double kill, 3 for the round. Nate got the trade swinging in after he lost 2 of his teammates. But yeah, going back, obviously, I don't want to take anything away from TYDE. More importantly, actually, the player who just ended it, started it in Nate. Really good game sense with that nade, I think more than anything, right? You kill the player that's obviously sort of peeking out, going for the spawn peek. But to understand here, this is knowing full well that a player has run out of that window and then gone in back again. He may still be lingering and he may still be loitering. He does get that kill with the nade. Well played, Nate. Well played, TYDE. Elevate, though, I don't think they'll be playing like that again, right? So you get your freebie. That's a freebie for TYDE. They're not going to get another one like that. Now it's back to really having to play their absolute best to get rounds from Elevate.
Upstairs we go then for round 8. And nothing from the lineup here from Elevate suggesting that we will see a repeat of that previous round. Instead, anticipating the hotly contested areas of the red drop, the cloud, the default plants to persist. And the setup with the head holes and reinforcements over towards Freezer reaffirming that. Might see a small roam here from Sapper and Mr. Punch. Some teams on the attack will go for vert control near reading, so you have to be mindful of that as a defender. And Elevate will just be mindful of that. But now, looking to extend that lead once more. Get closer towards match point. TYDE, meanwhile, very close now to being able to even out this map, and with their lineup anticipating a red drop, lots of soft breach available to them.
A bit bizarre though, if TYDE take this round, from the 8 rounds played, it would be 6 attacking rounds, guys, and 2 defensive rounds. And I know obviously the meta shifting towards attackers, but even on a map like KAFE, then it kind of really nails home the fact that attackers are in a pretty good place right now in Siege. TCH, don't think he's been spotted. Able to just linger around lounge. Still 2 minutes, a lot of time, Looking for that opening kill. Edge is closer. Now he may get pinched though. Oh, he finally got the angle. But the player that was behind him on the rappel, I think, took away some of his attention and therefore took away the chance of getting the kill. Now he's just running around hopelessly and aimlessly. Not one that DCH would want to watch back, and not a round that Elevate would want to watch back so far. 90 seconds left. Mark at Washrooms and Pixel probably has to find this next kill. Otherwise, they might just get overwhelmed on site. Oh, wow.
2v5 now. Could be a 1v5 as Mr. Punch is low. Onigiri responds with the LMG.
Attackers have located a bomb.
But traded. And now it's Mr. Punch down below. They know exactly where this player is, and TYDE are going to equalize this match for a piece. That's a big statement.
Massive statement. 6 of the 8 rounds to the attackers on KAFE. Early days into the second half though, and of course with Elevate still on the defense. Not doom and gloom, but there's just a hint of a TYDE upset. 4-4. Elevate completely dismantled the Knights in Playday 1, 7-1. We've talked them up during that triple rehost. All
Used by attackers.
of the hype and love for Elevate, and it could all just get thrown out the window if they lose this here. That would be a disaster. But then full credit to TYDE, and in some ways, guys, the reminder that we've so often said today, basically fighting for their major lives. They have to win this game. It would be so big for TYDE, not only if they win this for the sake of keeping, their chances of making top 2. You take down a top 2 competitor, and then suddenly gives you form going against everyone else in the competition. It could be basically a stage changer if they win this.
Man, it changes the stage for the entire league, because if TYDE win this, no team's won 2 matches yet, which would be absolutely insane to think about. Of course, if Fury then go on, for example, to win the final game, then every team's won a game, which,
Yeah.
well, again, early days, but still, it's not a very long stage. So that would be quite interesting. The thing I do want to quickly note is, Elevate going back to the same site, they've just lost 2 in a row, not taking their tactical. I can't really think of too many better chances now, where you've clearly really struggled in the entry phase of 2 rounds in a row.
Yeah.
Just take a chance to settle down after that really long pause, consolidate what's going wrong, and try to correct it. Instead, they're going back. I guess maybe they've had some really quick inkling as to what they need to try and tidy up.
Bomb located.
And a lot of that is going to be on the shoulders of the players roaming early and contesting this map control, because from TYDE so far, it's been really clean. And 2 rounds in a row, they've been in a 5v3 advantage early.
Credit to TYDE, they've definitely brought their A game in trying to disrupt Elevate. It, to me, feels like they've put in the homework. They've put in the effort in understanding ways that they can maybe find victory against Elevate, a team that, well, so many in APAC South struggle to find victories against. Nate, aggressive over towards shot. Onigiri, though, they got the opening kill, was traded back, though, immediately. Nate continues to be aggressive, wants to peek the play over towards Pixel, holding back more so towards Washroom. 90 seconds left, 4 versus 4. There's that push, though, from Mark. He survives. Oh, and then into the Frostmat. What a turning of events for Nate. Can get salvaged, though. And there is still time. Oh, what a shot from Shibe. 2 rounds in a row, guys.
And now TYDE theoretically have the advantage. Nate may get picked up. And if he does, he'll be low on HP, but can still be used as an entry. Onigiri, though, swings for the res. He times it perfectly.
Wow.
Plays off the sound cue. No trade from Tex or Shibe. And now it flips once more, but Shibe steps
Shibe.
up. A 2 versus 2. Tex has hit another fast mat. Unbelievable from TYDE. just when their attacks started to look good, it has fallen to pieces. Shebay's had a good round though. I wouldn't count him out just yet with 30 seconds to go.
What is it with APAC and those pog mats? Oh, they just have so much of an impact. 20 seconds left. He knows the player sitting inside a freezer, but you are the one that needs to move, Shibay. You're the one that needs to make the play happen. You do have that diffuser in hand.
10 seconds to go.
There's not a lot of information. He definitely just saw that player pushing around cocktails. He goes for the swing. Headshot landed. Needs to get the player to push out a freezer, but there's no point for Sapper to move. There's no point.
Operators, you have
Sapper plays that perfectly. Discipline of the highest order as Tex sits in the background, unable to move, unable to help. Massive round win for Elevate.
I love APAC South. Oh boy. 2 frost mats, 1 round. Down to the 1 versus 1. Sapper
defenders, protect your
played that
bombs
really,
by attack.
really well. It could have been quite easily in that situation to feel uneasy and to let the pressure get to you, swing, and he would have died. But instead held his ground. Stood up when Elevate needed him. 5-4, now the scoreline. This match just picks up another gear, it feels.
A much needed round win for Elevate. 4 of the last 6 rounds had gone the way of TYDE. They now retake the lead, 5-4. After the time ran out on Shibay and his heroic, 6-1 since the rehost. But you know, again, going back to the first half, it was 10-3 from Onigiri. So now he's got 14 kills. No one else really having a whole lot in the second half. It's basically the Onigiri show that is really keeping Elevate, in my mind, as the team in front. If Onigiri was having a quiet performance here, I would say TYDE would be maybe a round or 2 away from closing this one out. But Onigiri has been a difference maker, just as much as those frost mats in the last round from DCH. 5-4. TYDE so close, and in some ways, even overtime would be somewhat of a good result here, guys. Even if it's an OT loss, it's still a point. It still gives TYDE something moving forward, takes something away from Elevate. That's obviously not on their mind right now. They probably feel they can win this. But has the momentum been taken out of the TYDE tires from that last round? Are they a little bit flat from those frost mats?
Some sore ankles, perhaps some sore egos after that one, but it's about picking themselves back up now. Still very much a winnable game. Certainly feels a lot more winnable than it did 45 minutes ago before the match begun. Elevate being tested and TYDE setting up for a play. Hysterics sneaks up. Oh, this is so much control. So much control. If he finds a pick, that's big. No trade. No one from Elevate wants to peek back down, and Hysterics retreats.
So noticeable, Elevate, and the way that they're just not playing into these trades, not playing into these peaks. They're sitting back. We saw it a little bit, obviously, from Sapper in the last round with Freezer. They're not wanting to really get too overly aggressive and make mistakes. They really want TYDE to be pushing out and then putting themselves in the worst positions for then Elevate to swing. 55 seconds left, giving up this cocktail control now. To tie with that extra player, it is going to be quite helpful for the late round, but I do worry for time. Time is a factor here, a very big one. And still a frost map, by the way, at that default plant as well down below. 35 seconds, time a factor, and they lose Hysterics below. So a bit of lower control as well for Elevate. I mean, they're just running out of time. Time is everything. TYDE get moving now or never.
20 seconds. Sapper, top of white stairs, gets a pick. Disrupts the control up above for TYDE. Nate drops. Mark responds. Tex as well, but he falls. Nate's left. Nothing he can do. Elevate now with match point.
And deservedly so. Just played that too easily. Just didn't play into TYDE's early aggression. They get the early kill. They get the advantage. Elevate then don't scramble around looking for the trade. They hold position. They know position is power. Timeout actually by Elevate, interestingly enough, here with 2 match points. Looking for all 3 points from this game. They just look calm under any sort of pressured situation. They don't panic. Lose a player, doesn't matter. Hold position. Don't peek. Don't swing. Don't give them more. Don't let them get 1 and turn that into 2. That's the mindset that Elevate have. And then TYDE just ran out of time. Just too slow in their approach and clearing cocktail. 40 seconds left. You haven't even really got them out of it. I mean, that ends up being your downfall because you get to 20 seconds left and you have to make hasty decisions. And hasty decisions, guys, are not good decisions.
No, especially not against Elevate, who throughout this match have looked their very best when they're sticking largely to their game plan and being able to execute it. TYDE have looked the most dangerous when they've been able to throw something at Elevate that's unexpected. And, I mean, they tried that in the last round, even with Hysterics, the push-up round stairs. He did get a pick, but it was a matter of then being able to take advantage of it. And Elevate stuck to their guns and made it work. Now we go over to the kitchen objective for round 11 and what may be the final round in this match. The writing on the wall now for TYDE, though. They don't win the next 2 rounds. Mathematically, making the major is basically not going to happen. So, big 2 rounds for them if they can push it.
When we've said it, they would have to win every single game from here on out. They lose this in regulation. I think they would be able to get to 18 points actually still. No, actually, sorry, no, I think it's 15.
5 seconds to go.
Oh, 12. Even, it just gets worse and worse. 12 points would be the maximum amount, guys. That time I actually did the
It'd only be 4 wins because there's only 6 matches.
Exactly.
But
The second time I completely forgot. They're not playing next week, right? So they get the week off in Playday 3. So 12 points would be mathematically the most that they would be able to achieve. Elevate would go to 6 already. Yeah, it doesn't look good. So I don't see a world in which 12 gets you in. I think 13, 14 is probably possible. But that's not possible without overtime in this match here. 2 rounds to make it happen. The good thing for TYDE is they have actually shown the ability to win 2 rounds in a row. In fact, this game, guys, has gone 2 Elevate, 2 TYDE, 2 Elevate, 2 TYDE, 2 Elevate, 2 TYDE. Maybe. We're not there yet, but maybe the pattern might just continue.
we don't believe in magic. Right? Maybe we do. I don't know.
We'll see.
Up to TYDE, though, to disrupt. Stronghold from Elevate here over towards Bakery. Just some initial scouting from the attack. Shibe, credit to him. He's played well this game. Done quite a few vital picks and he's going to go for more. Jumps in, finds 1. Onigiri elsewhere did find 1 as well, but Shibe almost good for 3. But DCH keeps it in a 3 versus 3, half the round down.
He even knows he's nuts. That's why it's in his name. Shibe is nuts. Big shots. A really big second half. 3 versus 3. Bit of information for that drone as well. Minute 15. It's DCH though, and it feels like the game might be falling away for TYDE. Down to Tex and Hysterics. Got a little bit of time, but you gotta go and get that diffuser, so that takes up quite a bit of it. Tex inside a coat check, just bides his time, but I think Elevate have this one wrapped up, unless they make a mistake.
It's all about putting a bow on it now for Elevate, who, to their credit, in advantageous positions have looked in command throughout this 3rd stage so far. Mark spots 1, he'll call it out, falls back. That's smart siege. Tex is pinching though. Can TYDE maybe find this pick and crack open the round once more?
30 seconds, big shot, big fight. Tex loses to Mark. And a 3 versus 1 now for Hysterics. Does have the diffuser. Probably doesn't have much of a chance. No, shut down immediately. Well, Elevate must be the moon because the moon controls the TYDE. They take this match on KAFE 7-4. And clearly the best team in this region. They were troubled a little bit, but they pushed through and powered on to that top spot with all 6 points from the first 2 Playdays.
Sheesh, that's not bad for you, Jake. Controlling the Tide like the moon. I mean, you could have maybe left that for a more important match.
I would have
later in
saved that one for the
stage,
major, but they never invite me.
I don't know what to say to that. Well done, Elevate, GG. Are we ready? Are we ready to throw yet?
We have fun here at APAC. No, but what a game. What a really good match. Obviously, Elevate. I think what makes it better for them is they were tested a little bit, weren't they? Obviously,
Yeah.
right now, the big test is on Rob. Has he got his composure?
Probably
Find out.
not.